part-time, it also represented really kind of digging down. As you know, the data has to be searched for, and so it was looking at what the past data was, what the future, what the current data is, how they related, etc. So it took a while to get to that point, and then September 18th is when it was kind of ready for prime time. So that's the first part of it. We've then, as you know, been kind of back and forth in board meetings and got a lot of discussion from the community. The community wanted us to come and be there, which is a perfectly reasonable request. And so we held that public meeting in November. Over the holidays, not a whole lot happens, and so that brings us to January. The focus this month has been meeting with the Mendocino City Community Services District, and my understanding is those discussions have been very good ones, both with staff and board members, and they will be going to a board meeting sometime in the next several weeks. And then we are looking at another community meeting tentatively scheduled for February 18th. We're going to tie that one down. And at that point, it would be reporting back to the board and where you want to go with, if you recall, you endorsed a set of recommendations and said, planning team, work on making these, following up on these and bringing them back to the board. So that will happen in March, and then it'll be up to the board to give direction. So I would say that if you'll notice, the general plan is pretty intensive through June of this year, and then assuming that there is closure at that point, the Ukiah Valley area plan kind of picks up. You have to weave back and forth because it's not possible to have both big projects going simultaneously.
Well, I guess my only concern here is we've kind of pushed it in such a direction here that we had this space over this last year, and then we now kick it forward, and we're looking at something happening here between period of April and June of '09. And the question here that has me concerned here is, when we go to the end of the last page of this, local coastal plan with the words "to be determined." And I'm just wondering how that fits in here, because we've got a lot of white space as we move through this, and maybe it's just the level of attention. But can we be assumed that we will have the third planner in place attending to this through this next?
Yeah.
Through a good part of this year, at least.
Yeah, that is the plan at this point. I guess what I'd call the July 2009, where it talks about 2009 to the future, to be determined, I would consider that professional courtesy as I hand this off to Nash Gonzalez, and that it will be up to him to bring forward to you a proposal for how that might be addressed. And a lot will depend on how quickly you want to do it. The direction that we had received so far was do not use any outside consultants, and so we basically focused in on the things that staff could reasonably do. If you are going to embark on an entire coastal plan update, and the Mendocino Town Plan, either as part of that process or before or during or whatever, you have to count your resources, and one planning team member or even a planning team member and the coast staff and planning and building are not going to be able to do that all on their own. So I think there are issues of resources, I think there are issues of priorities, and that is a discussion that you'll need to have.
Okay, just one thing. The phrase address recommendations, this is on page 3 of the 4. Address recommendations not requiring revision of Mendocino Town Plan, not requiring revision. Can you anticipate or suggest what that phrase means?
What that means is there were a number of recommendations that are simply clarifications of the existing wording of the town plan and agreeing on what that ratio means and all of that. It is actually updating 2 of the 3 tables, because there are provisions for updating 2 tables not the third one, in the town plan. And it has to do with, one of the recommendations had to do with coming up with policy and strategy around code enforcement. And it had to do with how we follow up on violations that were, so they were things that didn't have anything to, well, it's all related, but did not specifically need the town plan to be amended. The question around amending the town plan is, do you do it piecemeal? And if you do it piecemeal, is that acceptable to the Coastal Commission versus doing an overall revision? And I'm kind of leaning, based on what we've done so far, I'm leaning towards, if you start to change one piece of that, you're really going to have to look at the whole thing, and the community is going to want to be very involved, and so you're not going to be able to kind of isolate one piece of it. The community discussion will be around the whole thing. So trying to kind of break off everything we can do up to that point, and then really you'll have to figure out how high a priority it is and what resources you have and planning and building has to be able to put towards it. So we're trying to give you some wiggle room, get done the things that can be done, but there's some decisions around resources that are going to have to be made.
Well, I understand that. I'm concerned we've been wiggling for years, and after a while it gets a little bit tiresome or problematic. You keep wiggling, after a while you wonder what you're doing. And I wonder if this is shared by Mr. Gonzalez, the extent to which you would be picking up on this as recommended or suggested by Ms. Glassy. This is consistent, I presume, with the discussions you've had with regard to the planning team and so forth, because I'm concerned here that we kind of edge up to it again and then don't know quite what we're doing or where we're going. I'm worried about when we get up there, we have this period in which we're not doing a whole lot at all. And then we get up there and we say, we're going to address recommendations not requiring revision. We're going to have arguments about what constitutes revision, what constitutes update, what constitutes just wiggling.
Right.
Okay. So I need some sense of this, because a lot of people have a great investment, time and energy in this, and it's significant. Unfortunately, compared to the other larger projects, it's a small piece of the pie, but it's an issue. Right. And I want to get some sense of this, make sure we're on the same page as new staff, the planning team, and the format that's laid out here for us.
And we've gotten it up to a point, and now Nash will take it from here.
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Colfax, Allison is correct. What we'll need to do is come back to the board with a work program, and we're going to have to take a look at the allocated resources. And we will be working with the executive office over the next few days to complete the transition, but we will be looking at some of these longer range projects down the road. One of the things that Ms. Glassy touched upon was the housing element, and that is one of the items that, although it may seem small, may seem as though it's a minor item in the whole mix of things, but it is a high priority item. Mainly because it is a requirement that the state of California puts on local agencies to have done. And yes, we're going to be working on a timeline of the end of August to have that certified by the state and brought back to you. Because again, the county is very dependent, or lots of public agencies are dependent on allocated and state resources for housing and so on. And so what we want to make sure is that we have an approved and adopted housing element in place. During the whole process, or the whole course, we'll be updating the board and bringing back these longer range plans. And as Ms. Glassy indicated, it's been the directive, it's been my understanding that